ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהכל נהיה בדברו. There are two words that I'd like to analyze with you. I am not a linguist, but how I perceive these two words. One of them is sympathy. You know, I sympathize with you. What does that mean? I understand your situation, and I sympathize maybe with your difficulties, with the situation that you're going through at this moment, maybe with your family, maybe with your business, maybe with pain, who knows? I sympathize with you. There's another word that is to empathize. Empathize. What is empathize? I think it means I try to place myself in your position. It's not that I'm looking at your pain from the outside, like in sympathy. I am trying to penetrate you and then experience the pain, then experience the situation. I try to place myself in your place in order to really feel what the situation affects, how I react in front of them. You know, I use the Bible as my basic source, and I want to once again recount the story of Joseph and his brothers. Joseph had 11 brothers. There were 12 altogether, but the brothers were jealous of him because of his dreams and what have you, and finally they decided to kill him. But because of the intervention of one of the brothers, instead of killing him, they go and sell him as a slave to the Egyptians. You know, slavery in those years meant a death sentence. You'll never get out of it. There was no social mobility in those times. Once you were condemned to something, you remained for the rest of your life in that situation. So it was really a death sentence to Joseph. Were they right in doing it? I don't think so. Were they right in hating him? Maybe yes. Maybe were they right in despising him? Maybe yes. You know, because Joseph also did some things that awakened certain feelings in his brothers. But to sell him as a slave, I don't think so. That was extreme, obviously, and I think we never really recovered from that episode of jealousy and of anger and of real brutality of the brothers against Joseph. But there was also their father Jacob. What were they going to tell the father Jacob? Jacob knew that Joseph had met with his brothers, and what happened to him? He had gone to seek them out. This is what Jacob had sent him for. Well, they went and took that tunic. You know, there was a special coat of many colors that the father had bought for him. And apparently that was sort of a sign of monarchy, that he was going to be the top man among the brothers. And they were jealous because of it. So they took that same coat and filled it with blood, moistened it with blood of an animal, and came back to the father and said, "Recognize, this is the coat of your son." And the father concluded, a wild animal must have devoured my son. But he never stopped thinking about Joseph, because Joseph was a dreamer, he was a dreamer. Let's go back to these brothers. They weren't right in what they were doing, what they did. Did they think of Joseph? Did they think of his cries? He didn't remain just passive when they sold him as a slave. He implored them, "Don't do that to me." And yet they did it. Didn't they think of their father? What would be the reaction of a father to see his son's death? You know, children are supposed to bury parents, not parents bury children. That would be the greatest grief that their father would go through. Didn't they have any sympathy for their father? Or didn't they have any empathy for their father, for what they were doing to somebody else? I think this is our culture today. We only think of ourselves. You know, what is good for me? And we do not, many a time, take into consideration the effect, what we do. What effect does it have on others? I don't know why God decided to send the Jewish people into slavery. They were slaves for over 200 years. Why was that necessary? Maybe it was necessary so they should live the life of a slave. They should not only look at slavery from the outside, they should experience it. Then they will have real empathy for what slavery means. how it takes away your dignity, takes away your freedom. Your life is not in your own hands. You don't know if there'll be a tomorrow or not. Everything depends upon those who are above you. You know that the pilgrims that came from England to the United States, they left because of what they felt was religious persecution. When they crossed the Atlantic, they imagined themselves crossing the Red Sea. They were leaving slavery into freedom, even though it was an unknown place. It was a desert. The United States, they didn't know what to expect, really. They wanted to get away from freedom because that was the message that they learned from the Bible. So that slavery in Egypt and the exodus from Egypt was a lesson for the entire world. But I think more than for the entire world, it was a lesson for the Jewish people. Because at every occasion we repeat, remember you were slaves in Egypt. You have to empathize. You have to feel, because your ancestors were slaves in Egypt. As a matter of fact, the night of the Seder, we say the following, that special meal of Passover, we say, Chayav Adam lirot et atzmo. Everybody should consider himself as if you are leaving Egypt. You have to feel that night. You eat bitter herbs, you eat matzah, unleavened bread, because you have to feel that you are a slave and you are now going out into freedom. This is why the Jewish people are always in the forefront of all liberation movements, of the black community in the United States, for Latinos, for anybody. You will always find Jewish people in the forefront, because we know what it is to be a slave. We know what it is to have our rights limited, taken away from us. But it's not only in those big issues, it's in our everyday life. You have to be conscious of what effect your actions have on the rest of your family, on your friends, on your community. Remember that when you do something, you not only are affecting your own behavior, you're at the same time sending a message to everybody around you. So make sure that what you do has the right effect upon everybody that is around you.